Everybody has some bad photos in their collection, and if you're like me, every photo's bad. Well, you know, of me. But everyone knows how to fix. Not everyone knows how to fix them on the computer, and that's why we have Bruce Fraser, author of Real World Photoshop 6. You know, I guess there were 5 before then. Or,
there were 5 before then.
Photoshop 6, and he's here to show us 3 easy steps to better images. I'll be your guinea pig.
Okay.
Because I know nothing about Photoshop whatsoever.
Okay.
In fact, I was going to ask you if you could show us some typical problems with photos, digital photos.
Sure.
In particular.
Well, actually, these can be problems with any kind of photo. This photo is underexposed, so it comes in really dark.
Okay.
And the color balance is messed up, so it looks really green. This photo, again, is kind of underexposed because the auto exposure in the camera has to expose for the bright highlights on the water, so it makes everything else dark. This one, film sometimes sees things differently from the way our eyes do. Yeah. So the shadows in this one have turned really, really blue.
Are these digital pictures, or have these been scanned?
One of these has been, this one is a digital capture, and the other 2 were scanned. This was scanned from a negative, and this was scanned from positive film.
Do you have some tips on how to correct these problems?
Absolutely.
Cool, because that's why you're here, right?
That's why I'm here.
All right, good enough.
There are 3 things that you need to do. One is you need to correct the dynamic range. What, you will ask me, is dynamic range. Okay. Dynamic range is basically the range of tones that you have from light to dark.
Okay.
And the world has a huge dynamic range. So we're stuck with what we can represent on the computer or in print. So we want to make sure that we use the whole of that dynamic range.
Okay, so that's the first
one. So the first thing we have to do is to spread the tones out in the image so that we're using as much of the dynamic range we have to work with as possible.
Okay.
Second thing is fixing the color balance.
Okay.
Color balance is basically what you look at when you look at an image and you say, oh, this looks green, or this looks blue, or this looks red.
Like that first picture that we had.
Like this first picture
oversaturated
here.
With green. Okay.
And the easiest way to fix the color balance is to find things that you know should be a neutral gray.
Oh.
Like clouds in the sky, light on water. These things usually look pretty much a neutral gray. If you fix the neutral grays, pretty much the rest of the color will fall into place.
Okay.
And then the last thing you need to do is you need to optimize the contrast on the image so that the subjects really pop. Contrast, again, is the relationship between light and dark.
Okay.
And if you have good contrast, your subject will really pop rather than just kind of blending into the background.
That makes sense.
So those are the 3 things that we need to do.
Can you show us?
Sure can. So we'll start with this one. The tool of choice for establishing a dynamic range is Photoshop's Levels tools. Okay. Now, what this shows us is basically a bar chart that tells us how many pixels are at each level.
Is this like a histogram?
This is a histogram.
Okay.
So we can see that right now the bottom chunk of the dynamic range and the top chunk of the dynamic range are basically being unused. So what we can do is very quickly just slide these sliders in until we get that hill where the data starts to appear. And that will optimize our dynamic range.
And the dynamic range.
So I can show you a quick before and after there. That's before, and that's after.
Oh, wow.
So you can see we've already brightened up the picture
night and day,
quite
literally.
a bit. Yeah. But we still have the problem with the color. So for color balance, the tool that I always use is Photoshop's Curves tool.
Okay.
This is a different kind of graph. Basically, it plots the input pixel level, which is what's already in the image, and the output, which is the change that you're making. So when it's a 45-degree line like this, nothing's being changed. Photoshop has a couple of tools that help us find what points on the curve we need to change.
Oh,
so
really?
If you put the mouse over on the image and hold down the mouse button, you can see you get a little circle appear on the curve.
Yeah.
And that tells us where on the curve we need to adjust things. Now, to fix color balance, we need to adjust the individual color curves themselves. There's a red curve, a green curve, and a blue curve.
Okay.
So
it all kind of sounds complicated, eh?
It sounds complicated, but it's easier to do than to talk about.
I imagine just getting into it will.
What I'm going to do is we have an info palette up here, and that tells us the numbers that are under our cursor.
Okay.
So to get a neutral gray, you need equal numbers of red, green, and blue. And we can see right now we've got 102 red, 164 green, 154 blue.
Okay.
So we need to Well, what I would do is I'd leave the blue alone, reduce the green, bring up the red.
And you're trying to make it a gray.
We're trying to make it a gray, so we're trying to make these equal numbers.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you hold down the Control and the Shift keys when you click here, it will actually place a point on each of the 3 individual channel curves.
And you said red, green, blue. Oh, okay,
red,
there's
green,
the
blue.
red.
So there's the point. So we know that we want to... Actually, let me start again because I've lost my point.
Quite all right. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's live television. We can edit it out later.
So we can see we've got 102, 164, and 149. So we're going to take 149 being in the middle as our reference. So we're going to take the red, and we're going to change it from an input of 102 to an input of 149. Now, you can do this by dragging, but a much simpler way is simply when you know the numbers.
Oh, I just saw it like flash red there.
You can type in the numbers that you want. So you can see we're already making progress. And if we do the same thing on the green rather, we need to take that down from 164 to 149.
Oh, wow.
And so we've gone from this fairly ugly blue-green thing to something that actually looks more like life on planet Earth.
That is amazing.
And then our last little thing that we want to do is we want to fix the contrast.
Sure.
And to do that, what I usually do is I find probably a really bright part in the image.
And you're going for a cloud that's white.
And I will command-click to place a point there and then look at a really dark place in the image, like this tree trunk. And then we steepen the curve between them.
Sure.
And as you make the curve steeper, it increases the contrast. And you can just work visually until you find a sweet spot.
Now, Photoshop, I know, is an expensive program.
Yeah, it is.
Is there a way for a new user to kind of get into it without spending so much money?
Well, the first thing you can do is you can get a free 30-day trial demo from Adobe's website of Photoshop itself.
Okay.
If that completely overwhelms you, Photoshop LE is still bundled with a lot of scanners and digital cameras. There's a new consumer-level program called Photoshop Elements that also does some of these things.
Just various levels of what it can do. Okay.
But, you know, Photoshop, if you buy Photoshop, it's going to be the only image editing program you need.
Oh, that's what everyone says, and actually looking at this, I can believe you.
Yeah.
I can believe you.